time for another Two Women Talking. I'm Tomboy, Leanna Kersner.
I'm Girly Girl, Song W. Erickson.
And we're continuing our discussion of toxic people with toxic men. Now, the last 2-3 parts, I'm not sure how I'm going to split it up, were about toxic women. Everything from Taylor Swift to Shadowheart to why you obsessed with your man's phone. And we're going to now pivot to the other side of the phone brawl. We're not going to do relationships yet. That's going to be the final part in this series. We want to focus on we tiptoed around this a lot, right? So we wanted to do toxic women first, because now toxic men, toxic masculinity, the discussion around this has become toxic. And I want to be really clear that we are at no point saying masculinity is in itself toxic.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, there are a lot of masculine virtues that I personally ascribe to a lot. Nobility, a certain amount of delayed gratification, shall we say. I won't say sacrifice, because I think that based on working with men and based on examining, like studying gender a lot, and especially the way gender is depicted in media, this idea of sacrifice and masculinity is at the core of the toxicity, that to be a real man means to suffer and die.
I think sacrifice can be a positive trait, but I do think we've overemphasized it.
Yeah, and that's what I want to break down.
Degree.
Yeah, I want to break down when it's positive, because I'm somebody who does it. When it's positive and when it's negative. And again, I want to reiterate our 3-part test for toxic people, because it's important to have a test, so it's not just, oh, I don't like them. Toxic people are self-centered, manipulative, abusive, and lacking in empathy. Toxic people drain others' energy by constantly demanding attention, sympathy, or validation. Focus on demand, not wanting attention, sympathy, and validation, demanding it. And toxic people tend to disrespect emotional and physical boundaries. And, when we started doing this, we talked about Jonathan Majors. And I don't want to talk about the outcome of the trial, because it may be resolved by the time this airs. I just want to talk about Jonathan Majors, and guys like Jonathan Majors and Johnny Depp and people like that, who find themselves in these situations where they are accused of abuse. I mean, okay, Johnny Depp was accused, and Amber Heard lost the civil suit. She was found guilty of defaming him. She was found to be defamatory. It's not a crime. It was a civil suit. Jonathan Majors was accused of far less. And that's one thing I think that was lost in the whole hoopla around his trial. What Jonathan Majors was accused of, again, recorded before the verdict, so there may be a verdict, there may not be a verdict, was accused of fracturing his then girlfriend's finger, doing something behind her ear, the back of her head, and then emotional abuse. And Rolling Stone then did an expose on him, where former classmates and this, that, and the next thing, said he was a toxic person and was emotionally abusive. One person said he was physically abusive. At trial, prior things about another injury she sustained, the trial invoked his race. And I admit I started off the whole thing, and I'm curious where you started, Song, because obviously we have completely different starting points on these things. But my first thought is, he was a Black man at Yale. Of course there is going to be some toxicity somewhere there. And I know that's a very, very personal, probably terrible take. I'm just saying emotionally where I started. There's no way you go through that contradiction without coming out profoundly fucked up. Where was your starting point?
I knew nothing about him. Like,
You hadn't seen any of his Kang performances or Creed
no,
3
no,
or
because I just finally saw Loki like last week.
okay,
And I still haven't even watched season 2 yet.
but you saw that, that final
Mhm.
episode that
Yeah.
he just blew everyone off the screen in about 10 minutes.
I I did not know what to expect at all. I
Yeah.
was honestly expecting another intimidating, forceful presence like Thanos, and then he comes in and he's all giggly and everything, and I'm like, I I'm interested.
Yeah.
Like that performance was fascinating. So that was something. But yeah, I even like when the accusations started coming out, I had never heard of him other than that he was playing Kang.
Yeah, he's a very good actor. He's one of those people that is very different in, seeing him and Tessa Thompson both in Creed 3 was really something because of course she's Valkyrie in
Mm-hmm.
the MCU, and you see how much they actually are acting. And I think people have been very, very I think years from now, we may still not know totally what happened because he is an excellent actor.
Mm-hmm.
He is an excellent actor. And the thing that I want to focus on for the purposes of this discussion, again, because we're recording it before there's a verdict, his expressions of suicidal ideation in the relationship, and this being a very, very thorny thing,
Mm.
because that can be a form of psychological abuse. It's also a thing that men really struggle expressing. And I was really dismayed how the media handled the reporting of that coming out at trial, because they were just like, oh, yeah, he's abusive. And I'm, wait, what? How did you come to that so quickly? Because it was part of the prosecution's argument.
I'm pretty sure it's the same way some people came to the conclusion Johnny Depp was guilty and abusive was because a woman said it.
I think
And
there's
I'm being snarky when I say that, but
but
it's
you're not wrong, even though,
yeah.
like, okay, fair, you're snarky, I like snarky, song, so that's good.
I mean, we're
Song,
friends for a reason.
yeah, I mean, Song put the finger on something I did, and I didn't know it was going to be a mic drop, but she described it as just flippant enough to send a chill down the spine. This is why we love Song, that she identifies that, because I was like, why is everybody cheering me for this point? Anyway, but yeah, I was disturbed because, I mean, part of the taught toxicity in men, and I'm trying to find a different way to go about it, because let's face it, toxic masculinity has been talked to death. I think everybody's sick of it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that is toxic is that every time a man expresses he is having problems, people, how could you do this to me? I can't take this. You're so difficult. And this is when we have to get into the way toxic masculinity is enforced by women.
And here's something I want to say. One of the big points is you get some women who say, oh, well, part of the counter to toxic masculinity is we want men to express their feelings.
Yeah.
But then when men do, many times they come back with stories of the woman losing respect for them or laughing in their face. Or you even get women who come on Twitter and they're like, ugh, this guy started telling me about his emotions. And it was so dumb and it was so whatever. And so it's just for the point,
Yeah.
that is a toxic woman.
Yeah.
And that's not someone who you should be giving your time and energy to, anyways. Because if a man or woman, if they can't respect you enough to, if you're close, like obviously don't
Mhm.
just start go spewing all your emotions to a coworker you barely know. That's its
Right.
own kind of toxicity.
Right.
But if you're friends with someone or in a relationship with someone and you cannot express your emotions or what you're going through, that's just not a healthy relationship. And the thing is, if a woman can't handle a man sharing his emotions, if she can't handle seeing him cry, she's immature and toxic. Don't be in that relationship. So you can't just say, oh, well, I expressed myself to a woman and she laughed at me. All women are awful. No, some women are toxic.
Thank you for
They're,
bringing that up. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, no, that is something that tends it makes my blood run cold
Mhm.
when men, and in this place in this case it is um heteronormative relationships, because let's face it, when you're same sex attracted and someone does something, uh I I admit I've had the moments where women are fucking crazy, man. But I
I
catch
mean, so have
myself.
I.
Well, it's like,
So
yeah,
have
it's like,
I.
wait a minute. But most of the time it is that because you are not a member of that group, it's very easy to, it's the Sherlock Holmes thing with Irene Adler.
Mhm.
Uh, this is, I actually call it Sherlock Holmes syndrome, because Sherlock Holmes was so baffled by women. He was afraid of women because he didn't know how women think. And Irene Adler was the whole of her sex. She was the woman. She was every woman to him. And this is where I start going, Sherlock Holmes may be neurodivergent, because that
And
is not a typical reaction.
I'm sure there was some neurodivergence in there, but I do also think it, it kind of makes sense to me that, especially in that era where you didn't get men and women interacting on a social level as
Yeah.
much, not on a deep social level, that it would create this, the mystery of the woman, which is nice in poetry and in song, but it in actual application, it's kind of crap.
I do think the cornerstone of male toxicity is, and female toxicity, but treating the opposite sex like a completely different species.
Mhm.
And we do see some of that. And again, I feel terrible for people that are part of these high profile trials, because they have the worst moments of their life splashed in the headlines.
Yeah.
And the Michelle Obama speech that Jonathan Majors allegedly made to his then girlfriend is an example of something that, again, depending on the context, God, I sound like the presidents of major US colleges now. Depending on the context, that could have just been yeah, he's right. It all depends on how it was said, when he said it, the Michelle Obama thing,
It's
you know.
also going to be a question of, like you said, context, but also just meaning, because it's like, okay, is he asking her to be more like a black woman, or
Right.
is it that these are the classy women who have been an example to him, and so he's asking her just to be classier, and just those are the examples he has to use.
And the examples he gave were unique, because obviously Michelle Obama and her relationship with Barack Obama
Mhm.
and Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., excuse
From what
me.
I understand, those are very different relationships
Very.
too.
And so I do think that he was basically, because he was doing the I'm a great man, which, oh Lord, dude, you're a villain in Ant-Man, spare me. But I do get the sense of
Oh yeah, that was his first appearance. I haven't seen the third Ant-Man movie either.
it's fun. And you know what? He's really good as playing the different Kangs.
Mhm.
And I understand the moments where you have to kind of talk yourself up. There's clearly, Jonathan Majors clearly has some work to do, no matter, what happened with the trial. There are some really deep insecurities now. And in some ways, it's really, he still has a second act in his mid 30s
Mhm.
in a way that men who don't get bad enough to really have to face their demons until much later in life. A lot of men hit the wall in their late 40s and 50s, and that's
Mhm.
where, midlife crises come from. And again, I think it was probably hard, very hard, being a black man in the Yale drama program, especially with a military background.
Oh yeah.
He must have felt very alienated, and he must have felt like he had to be 1,000 times better than everyone else. And he did that old standby of beat the crap out of yourself, harder, faster, stronger, right?
It's interesting because like that feels like three contradictions all at once.
Yeah,
Black man at Yale, military background, and drama.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, those three things are at odds. You talked about that, hyping yourself up with I'm a great man. It reminds me of the actor Paul Giamatti.
yes,
He's in Billions. He was in the HBO John Adams
yeah,
miniseries. He has a tendency to play these roles like the two I just mentioned,
yeah,
where it's a man with some power,
yeah,
but
yes,
he's not actually good at it.
yeah,
Um, Especially in the show Billions,
oh yeah,
where he plays a politician and a justice department person, and he has people who are pushing him to be great, and he has
mm-hmm.
an education and prestige that tells him he should be great,
Yeah,
but he's not, but he walks like he is, and it just makes you hate him all the more
yeah,
because he's so petty. And in the John Adams miniseries he was in, he played John Adams himself, our third president of the US, not yours, sorry.
we don't have presidents. Yeah, I knew
Yeah,
what you meant. Yeah.
yeah. But there's a line where Abigail Adams, who, Lin-Manuel Miranda never mentioned Abigail Adams in Hamilton, and that's proof that the show isn't as feminist as it likes to claim. Sorry, I'm going off. But there's a point where Abigail Adams says, "You do not need to quote great men
Yes.
to prove that you are one."
Yeah.
And then sticking with HBO, I'm going to jump over to Game of Thrones really quick. I really just brought up Paul Giamatti because he plays that role so well,
Yeah.
of men who say they're great, but they're not. Sorry, Giamatti. Um, but, in Game of Thrones, there's the line, a king does not need to repeatedly say he is the king.
Yeah.
Or a king who has to tell people he is the king isn't actually, something like that.
Yeah.
And there is that, if you hype yourself up like that,
Well, it's
it,
imposter syndrome walking.
yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I understand hyping yourself up, but especially if you need to tell the woman beside you
Yeah.
to act a certain way so you look right, you're
Yeah.
on kind of thin ice.
And again, we are talking about media reports. This is her version of events. We don't
Yeah.
know was it a joke? Was he trying to hype her up and doing it badly, or was he giving her a lecture? I again, I think that there's a lack of accountability for women when women are toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there is a uh there is an accountability overdose. It's not accountability anymore. It's shame
Mm-hmm.
when men do something toxic. And the whole thing about this very bad relationship. I do think it was a toxic relationship. I think they were worse together than they were as
Absolutely.
individuals. But I think that um you know, it's spilling out into into the street, and she claims he broke her finger fighting over a phone again because she thought he was cheating. I think that in her shoes, if things went down that way, I might too. Um, but the fact that she went dancing that night,
Yeah, that's the part that raises questions.
and as somebody who has fractured fingers and toes quite a few times, I did when I was, God, it was the year Metroid came out. So 89, I dislocated my finger playing basketball outside, and I did walk around. I snapped it back in, walk around. I was in a daze, but I was aware it hurt,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Now granted, I was a kid. I couldn't get blind stinking drunk, but I don't know. I if someone had just if a man I was close to had just attacked me, I would not feel safe around strangers while I was intoxicated. And that's, you know, that's this is a point where we're not supposed to question her. There's no perfect victims. You know what? There's why did you do that? And then there's I have a really hard time relating to this.
I, I can't believe I'm going to push back on this a little,
Yeah,
but I am going to play devil's advocate for a
right.
second. And I don't mean to Monday morning quarterback
Yeah,
this
no,
case.
I think yeah, and we're all Monday morning quarterbacking this case. This
Yeah,
is why we're just using this as an example.
yeah. But
Yeah.
so here's my thing with that is I don't know how old she is, but the concept of clubbing has become so ubiquitous
Yeah.
in people around my age and especially a little younger. Again, I don't know how old she is,
Mhm.
that honestly it doesn't even seem like an automatic no to me, because especially if she is someone that goes out and drinks a lot or takes a few pills at the club.
But is this more consistent with the behavior of somebody who was just attacked, or more consistent with the behavior of someone who just found out her man was cheating?
See, I think I would have to know more about who she is and what she regularly does, because if she's someone who, oh hey, worships at the altar of Shar and tries to run away from her problems.
Well, but there we go, right? I mean, and that's the thing, is that, let's face it, cheating is a toxic behavior.
Yes.
And that's where I wanted to go with this, is he is not an innocent, and it's not like the Johnny Depp case where he is an addict. He's very open about being an addict.
Mm-hmm.
He is like that traditional addict of just substances.
It feels very, it's like the cases have some similarities, but
But
they
they,
also feel very different,
yeah, and
which
there Amber Heard was jealous as well, but there
and
was no real indication that Johnny Depp cheated.
and I feel a bit terrible saying this, but from a storytelling perspective, it's great that we've got these two cases that are so different, that
Yeah,
they can emphasize two completely different kinds of toxic relationships.
because I mean, let's face it, the point where Chris Brown beat the crap out of Rihanna, and that one was, no, he did it. He beat her black and blue. But again, car, phone, there's something about that combination that just makes toxic relationships explode. But
Well, but when we were prepping for this, I also mentioned it was giving me Ike and Tina Turner flashbacks.
well, yes,
Celebrity couples just need to stay out of cars, man.
I have a real thing with fighting in cars. I am very anti fighting in cars.
Oh yeah, no,
It,
it's
it's so unsafe, but it's
mhm,
also just the contained space and the fact that you can't face each other. Which is why a lot of men are more comfortable side by side. This is actually a
mhm.
gendered thing, that eye contact for some guys actually inflames things.
And see, that's why when I read uh articles on relationship advice and stuff, one of the things is, hey, if you have something serious to talk about with your partner, maybe bring it up when you're in the car. So it's like you don't have to have eye contact, and also it's a limited set of time because you know
That
eventually you're going to read. I don't know if that's a great idea. It might depend
no,
on the topic.
it yeah, that is not a good
No.
idea. And but with this cheating,
Mhm.
I talked about it at the end, like cheating, cheaters cheat. It is something to do. I know some marriage counselors love to say, "Oh, it's proof the relationship broke down." And no, 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 no.
No.
Cheating is bad. It's not necessarily unforgivable. That's up to the individuals in question. And there's a difference between somebody who did it once, felt terrible, never did it again, and people who just serial cheat.
Yeah. And, just talking to the audience here for a second, the reason we talk about, like in the last one, we talked about Taylor Swift, and here we're talking about Jonathan Majors. The reason we talk about these celebrity cases and
People know them.
fictional characters,
Yeah.
it's because they're a great example. And it's like I said before, Taylor Swift, her examples of her toxicity are so big. They're a billboard. It's really easy to point them out. And that's why celebrity cases, like I was saying, it's great in a dark, morbid way that we have these two completely different situations, because now we can use them as scenarios to explain, hey, these are different types of toxicity, and toxicity doesn't always look the same.
Yeah. Yeah. You may hear my cat Scout purring now, guys. That is not a technical difficulty. That is a cat. He decided to join us. But yeah, I mean, and that's why the whole cheating thing. I mean, then we get into Kanye West, very toxic person.
Very.
Kanye West is an example of a guy legit mentally ill, also profoundly toxic. The two are not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually thought, the stuff that comes out of Kim Kardashian, she's a vapid person. I don't think she's a bad person.
No, it's
She really tried with him, and she tried too hard. I Kanye West made me feel bad for Kim Kardashian, and I didn't think that was possible before that whole thing.
well,
He was terrible. And there's
it's
a shining example of a guy that all his friends staged interventions, and the people really tried with him.
and it's interesting because I have a suspicion Kim Kardashian has learned to eat a lot of shit,
Oh yeah.
because something I only just found out recently is part of her into the celebrity world was she was Paris Hilton's personal assistant.
Yeah.
And Paris Hilton in the 2000s was the big final boss of child celebrities,
Yeah.
because I recently watched a bunch of deep dives and documentaries about various Disney Channel stars and stuff, and so many of them ground their careers. I'm like, whatever happened to them anyway? And the documentaries are like, and things were growing great until Paris Hilton attacked. Like,
Paris That's like until Taylor Swift attacked. That's how I
yeah,
felt when Tom Hiddleston was dating her. It's like, no, 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 no. It's like when they finally reveal the monster in the movie. I was like, no, 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 get away from, get away,
yeah,
get away, get away, get away.
yeah, no, that's why I made the joke. It's like apparently she was the final boss of
Yeah, yeah.
celebrity back
But
then.
I mean, the Kardashian girls are a shining example of a mom who
Oh God.
Kris Jenner made choices, was clearly in a lot of miserable relationships for the status, you know, for
Mhm.
the money, for the lifestyle, and she found a way to do better by her girls by making them the commodity.
Mhm.
So they didn't have to be in marriages for a lifestyle, but none of those girls have great taste in men.
No, and part of it is because Kris, for all her strengths, is abusive in
She's
an
yeah,
emotional way, and it's left all the girls without their own personality.
she's a shark, right?
Yeah. So,
She is that this is the way of the world. She's trained her girls to take abuse from men.
yeah, and it once I realized that, it explained everything about the taste in men all those girls have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I think Kim does seem in her own way to be kind of nurturing.
in a very shallow
In a
Valley
very
Girl way.
well, yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of that in in Southern California. I shouldn't say
True.
all of California, specifically that part of California, and that's the thing that Jonathan Major's speech of "Be like Michelle Obama" and Coretta Scott King. He's not wrong. You do need to be made of pretty stern stuff to be involved in that life. But again, we know Martin Luther King cheated on Coretta.
Was he trying to turn a Marilyn into a Jackie?
It's possible. I don't know. I mean, dude, you're giving that speech to the woman who's the movement coordinator on Ant-Man. I keep going back to Ant-Man. You know, like it's Ant-Man, dude. You do it for the money.
Yeah.